Okay, we'll call to order the May 1st, 2024 regular meeting of Aspen Pitkin County Housing Authority. First item on the agenda is the roll call.
Okay. Peter?
Present.
John Doyle?
Here.
Ward Howenstein?
Here.
Don?
Accounted for.
Carson?
Here.
Kelley?
Here.
Francie?
I'm here.
And Allison?
Yes, I'm here. Sorry, just getting set up and we'll be on camera in a moment.
Great.
Good job, Allison.
Okay, we'll go to any agenda amendments. Don't believe we have any. Move to public comment. Is there anyone that would like to make public comment? Come on up, please. And if you would, just identify yourself and where you're from, and generally try and hold public comments to about 3 minutes.
Perfect. Good evening, APCHA members. Jeff Barnhill, resident of Truscott for almost 4 years. Yeah, just wanted to come today. The Truscott laundry facilities are in a bit of disarray. We did get a bit of updates from APCHA staff on Friday, but I just wanted to come here today to see if there's a chance that you guys could make getting those fixed up a priority. To my calculations, there's about maybe 6 washers. I might have missed a couple that are currently working, and I would estimate maybe 200 people are living at Truscott, maybe more, maybe a little less. It's just becoming a bit of a hassle. So yeah, if there's any way that we can make that a priority, that'd be greatly appreciated by not only me, but by Truscott at large. It may be a bigger issue than that even, but yeah.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Jeff, I know that we've been trying to get somebody to service those, and it's been very difficult to get anybody in the vicinity, much less the valley.
Sure.
So I think it is a priority, but it's just frustrating because you can't get somebody to do the work.
Yeah, and I just wasn't sure if you guys were aware or to what level and extent, and that's good to hear that you guys seems like you are aware.
Looks like Matthew.
I don't usually like to go back and forth with public comment, but I can assure you we've been working extremely hard on this in terms of getting somebody out to repair it. And then you said perhaps it's a larger issue, and it is, and we are looking at a completely different model for the laundry facilities, and in probably outsourcing that to a company that can says they can handle it. So we're very close to signing a contract, which would be a completely different model of doing the laundry facilities throughout the APCHA managed properties. So yes, and I know this has been a huge pain for you guys, and we've tried everything we can to get them repaired, and it has been such a pain that we're trying something completely different to make them work.
Awesome, yeah, and I appreciate the work you guys do. Obviously,
And
it's
that'll be-
massive for this community.
And that'll be going to City Council at some point. So
It's not washboards and clotheslines, is it?
the solution is not. That is not the solution.
They don't break.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you. Okay, I don't see anyone online, so we'll close public comment and go to Board of Directors comments, and we'll start with Allison.
Hi, thank you. I was excited from last meeting to hear that there was an email address established for the Board of Directors. I can't find it on the website, so I'd be surprised if other members of the public were able to. So I hope that becomes a status update in today's director's report. And that is all for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison. Peter.
No comment.
John.
No comment.
Ward.
No comment.
John Ward.
I was just made aware of this, but the reporting button still isn't working. I tried to report Fred Flintstone for driving too fast in North 40, but it wouldn't let me go any further than that. So that in the email, I'd like to get an email address so we can kind of segregate our emails as well, too.
Thank you. Kelley.
I'm a little brain dead from the last 4 hours of airport discussion, but I will just say I went to a really interesting conference last Friday in Grand Junction put on by Housing Partners, which is a housing provider in the Western Slope, and it was about mobile home protection and retention, and it was very interesting to talk to people who finance those type of projects, nonprofits that are entering into those type of projects. People were very interested in our history of projects, the multiple different models that have taken place. A lot of concern related to ongoing infrastructure costs, and how communities and neighborhoods pay for those and make those happen. And I left with some great new ideas. There was one request that I thought was fantastic, maybe for APCHA, or a role for APCHA, was that we should do a video of the history of our mobile home preservation, since we've done so many of them in the county, and that they have looked differently from one to another. So that was cool.
Cool. Just a few comments tonight. Francie.
I don't have any comments.
He knew that. He already knew that.
Thank you for being here in person.
Yeah.
So just wanted to bring up something I've talked about in the past, and that's the IGA. So as most of you, I think, remember, when the IGA was rewritten in 2019, one of the things that was kind of on the agenda was to kind of revisit it at some point and continue to work on the IGA. I think in particular, the section just with regard to the authority of the board, with regard to just sort of day-to-day assignment of tasks. Currently, that's with the city manager. And I know there was an intent to do that. And so just would like to ask, that's obviously up to the elected officials if that's something you want to take on or not. But it's been 5 years. And, I think that APCHA over 40 years has sort of evolved. I mean, that's what we do. And so I'm just kind of looking at some of the work that we have to do. I think we've done a lot, but I think we have a lot on our plate going forward, and I just think it makes sense, and it's time to look at the to look at sort of how that structure is with regard to, like I said, the executive director, sort of specifically. I think this board has had a big focus on transparency, and I think that the current reporting where the board can suggest things to the city manager, and the city manager can either choose to implement those or not, doesn't really provide a whole lot of transparency. I feel like if there is a conflict between the city manager and the board regarding a decision, I think that those decisions should be made in public, and there should be a public debate. And people may not like the decision if it's a difficult decision, but at least they can hear sort of both sides of the argument. And so that really is kind of the extent of my comments. I think that I would just ask that that you consider that. And I would also add, very proud to be on the board. I think we've got a great board that is really interested in tackling some very difficult topics, and I'm excited. I'm excited to tackle some of the problems that I think that we've got on our plate. So,
well, nobody's going to the city manager to complain about APCHA and complain about this or that.
No.
Right?
Right.
So,
As far as we know.
well,
If they are, I'm
I
not.
mean,
Right.
some of it I'm just
Yeah.
saying is you kind of have a faceless bureaucrat, that at least we can have some input in some process.
Yeah. Allison?
I want to build off that just a moment, because I did see on the city council's upcoming work schedule a discussion about APCHA. And I know there was one during the joint BOCC city council meeting recently. And I do feel that the rest of the board is kind of left out of those. And I wonder if there could be a system where, I know you go back to your other bodies and talk about what we do here. I would love some reporting back if we're not part of those meetings, for that to be, the close of that circle. If you guys talk about this entity in a week or two, then come back and loop us in or bring some of that because, yeah, I think that would help with some of that circular conversation as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Allison. Ward?
Yeah, a couple of comments. First of all, back in 2019, I know it was in the consciousness to revisit the IGA and particularly the governance of APCHA and the relationship between the city manager, APCHA board, and the executive director. And I'm definitely interested in revisiting that. And Allison, you're just to respond to your comments, in the past, we haven't had a real consensus in the city council on topics that are coming before the APCHA board. And John and I felt that it was important to try to engage the other 3 members of city council so that we could represent the city council instead of just 2 members or 1 member of the city council that is a voting member for APCHA. So all of our meetings are open. I think you were there at the last work session, and we have another one coming up. And certainly extend an invitation to you, anybody else that wants to be there to tune in. But in answer to Carson, yeah, I'm definitely interested in revisiting the IGA.
Thanks.
And I guess I hope that extends to APCHA staff too. I do think from that last meeting, there was things where it felt like no one in the room knew the answer, but it would have taken one APCHA staff member there to come up to the table and just give some of the background because they're a trove of information. So I think it's just that full conversation. And Carson, I don't know if you're looking for support or not in bringing that up, but I agree with Ward that I would discuss that again as well.
Thanks. That's it. I'm going to do a good job keeping us on the agenda today because I have a birthday party to attend and I'm the one blowing out the candles.
Happy birthday!
So we'll see what we can do here.
COVID didn't put an end to blowing candles out, I guess.
Yeah,
So
that's
we're going
right.
to the St. Regis after the meeting?
Well, I'm probably going to have probably my kids will blow them out, but
All right.
it seems to be the way it works. Okay, so we'll go to next on the agenda, Matthew, Executive Director's comments.
Hi everyone, Matthew Gillen, the Executive Director for the Aspen Pitkin County Housing Authority. I'll keep it quick as well. So the board email address is APCHAboard, and I'll email everybody with this as well. We had to do some back and forth with IT, but it's up now. APCHAboard@aspen.gov, and you can find that email address in the section of the website which is about the board. So it's where it has all your names and your periods of office. But I'll send that to you for everybody. And we have requested, thanks to particularly Carson, we were aware that the report of concern wasn't working, and we tried all kinds of different things with reCAPTCHA, and it just didn't really work. So we have requested that the reCAPTCHA get turned off. So that'll get turned off soon, and it might affect a few other things. We just want to have that go smoothly. But we are trying to get that just turned off because it just wasn't working. We're doing interviews next week for the shortlist for the HOA/community engagement job. So we have 3 good candidates which we're interviewing next week for that. I'm also having a training with Scott Bowman, who does a lot of work with the city. We're doing that on Thursday. He's going to be coming through once a quarter or so, and we'll be working with him. And we've also signed a contract with him to be doing a couple days work a month on process mapping and other process improvements for the APCHA staff. And if his visit coincides with an APCHA board meeting, I'm going to have him come in and say hi to you guys as well. Work on the 2 trailer replacements at Woody Creek is proceeding. We've removed a couple old cars, and they're preparing the site to scrape that. Okay, and did the newsletter. Okay, now the one big thing I do want to talk to you about is the continuing work on HB 21-1110, the Colorado law for persons with disabilities. So that is particularly it applies to our website and all documents we prepare, and it's making sure those documents are accessible to everybody, to all individuals with disabilities as defined by the ADA. So Bethany and Andrew have been doing a lot of work getting the website into shape, which really at this point means hiding a lot of the documents that have been previously on there, HOA documents particularly, because they're not accessible in PDF, and we'll be having a further discussion on how and if to get those back online. But the big thing for you guys is Jackie has rewritten the entire APCHA regulations to be accessible, because as of July 1st, they all have
What
everything.
does that mean?
It
Not
means
rewritten.
well,
Well, what is accessible
it
mean?
means
I
that
don't
they
get that.
it means that they're accessible for people who would use, for example, a device that let them read it online if they have low vision or low hearing. So if you go into Microsoft Word, there's this whole, which I didn't even know about, there's this whole like background use of headers and text prompts, which, so so rather than just writing a title, you'd go in and say title to the portion in Microsoft Word, and that presents the text, so it's easy to read by an e-reader or other devices.
So you bring up HOA docs, right? And I went to look for them the other day
HOA
and I
docs are
couldn't find them.
PDF, so they'd have to, but going back to the regulations, Jackie has.
But so that's because I went and tried to find the HOA docs
Yeah.
for North 40
Right.
specifically.
And we can get them
And I
to
couldn't
people,
find
but
them.
they can't be up there until
Why?
because
I
they
don't
don't
understand. I don't understand why you've got some history. These documents were created 25 years ago.
That's the way the law
but
is
somebody
being.
can't go look at
The
them.
law was enacted by
Yeah.
the legislature 2 years ago that requires all websites for governmental entities to come up to a certain standard to make them readable, read being whatever
even have
technology
history,
for
you even
reading.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, every level of government in Colorado is having to comply with this right now by July 1st, unless there's an extension of time.
And it's going to
for,
be who's the
compliance.
federal agency who made the ruling? Yeah, but
But why
but-
can't people just make the print bigger on their own computer?
I
It has to do
don't
with
know.
searchability. It has to do
Yeah.
with, a computer reader, instead of saying a website, it'll say www.A.P.C.H.A. It's crazy. So you have to write all of those as APCHA website, and then you can put it next to it, but you have to make it a hot link. So it's very
It's a
cumbersome.
process.
At the end, though, even
Okay.
people without any particular hearing or vision or even mobility disabilities, it'll actually work really nicely, because when we use the headings, as Matthew said, you'll be able to collapse headings, you'll be able to search it better, but it is a federal mandate, and it takes a lot of work to get it up to speed.
So you've made the website essentially less accessible for 95% of
Right now,
people.
yes.
And that's what's gonna happen.
is
A lot of
correct.
people are just gonna take most of their information off,
Okay, so-
like small communities that
so
can't afford to
on-
comply.
Interesting.
So on June 5th, we'll be bringing you there's no policy changes, but Jackie's reordered the regulations, so there's no policy changes.
Aren't we codifying the ones that the board
Right.
approved the last time?
Right.
So
So-
there are one or two that you've
But it's-
already agreed to from the last meeting.
So bringing that for first reading on June 5th. We'll do a second reading on June 19th. That is to reflect the requirements of the Colorado Digital Accessibility Law that takes effect on July 1st. And we've reformatted and reorganized the entire regulation document for it to meet the requirements of the law. And we will be bringing that to you for a reading, and there is no policy discussion, so it's a revamping, and we will have time for discussion because that's what we do when we do the first and second reading, but there isn't a policy discussion. It is purely we've revamped everything, and we want to make sure the regulations, which are the most important thing, will be up there when the new law takes effect. So we will be compliant in that regard. So I was telling you about that.
Is there technology to go from PDF to voice, and if that is available, does that answer the needs of the ADA?
I don't think that would, because it has to have a specific reading. It's not just reading the text. It's reading hidden prompts inside, which is why you need to do the headers and do it and structure it that way. So it's not just reading the text. It's reading background information to pick up. I'm not an expert on this,
With
but
the embedded
yeah,
headers, then the reading systems will know that it's a header and that things under it are packaged under that header rather than just reading a complete Word document. So that's why we use these technical little breaks as part of Word, for example, if that makes sense. Otherwise, the machine would just read, and there'd be no break.
But it's going to be an ongoing effort. I think Allison has her hand up.
Allison?
Thank you. So just to clarify, right now on the website, we took down the HOA documents, or we took down any all the references to kind of all the different individual locations that are APCHA deed restricted. I'm wondering what's missing, and if we could, as we get into compliance, just write a sentence saying, if you'd like to see these documents, please contact.
Yeah, and we're doing, that's part of the effort, yes.
I was trying to see if we already have that, and I actually can't even find any of the houses.
Yeah, the website had some major surgery, and yes, as you point out, this is.
I was cussing Cindy for like trying to hide stuff. Gee, man,
Yeah.
Christmas, what?
I'm
I know
more than
these were
happy
here
to send
before.
all that
But
to
there
you
is,
if you want
but
me
if
to.
anybody
Just email
wants
me.
it, we can email it. But on public-facing website, there are severe restrictions kicking in, and if we do
I
not
understand,
comply
and
the best
every-
we can, we are liable to lawsuits. So we are doing the best we.
So some banner maybe on even the homepage, or definitely on anything you had to kind of hide for now, I think would just keep up that transparency and public trust of, we're undergoing maintenance. This is where you find, like, this is who you contact to get the documents you were looking for.
Great. Thanks. And that's all I have.
Okay, Cindy?
Again, check notifications for rental units. I've got two of them now.
Sorry.
And we continually add new resales every single week almost. So definitely check our website. That is still on our website. We are still advertising new units on our rental units, so you can still find that on our website. So definitely look at that, because that has not slowed down at all. Our ownership, our sales have not slowed down at all. So Burlingame 3 is all, I believe they're all now sold, and but we have a lot of resales that have come from that. So please check that. Thank you.
I did 2 years ago.
Okay, thank you. There's just one item on the consent agenda, which are the minutes of April 3rd, regular meeting.
I'll move.
A motion from John to approve.
I'll second.
Second, any discussion? If not, it's a roll call vote.
Allison,
Yes.
Kelley,
Yes.
Carson,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Ward.
Yay.
Okay, and Andrew.
Good afternoon. Let me just share my screen real quick and get started. Okay, 1 second. Okay, that's not going to work. All right, so I'm continuously working on making some updates to this. Trying a few things. We're looking more now at 4 quarters at a time rather than just a 3-month span, so we can start seeing, where some of these trends lie. I've had some thoughts about maybe start looking year to year or across, 2 years once we start getting that data. HomeTrek is still basically 3 years out, so it's still a very infant product in terms of being able to collect data. So I'm happy to share what I have, though. So in terms of inventory, our inventory did go up. We had one ownership unit in Snowmass that wasn't previously in the system on Snowmass Creek Road. It's just one of those ones that either it wasn't added to our previous ownership database and then transferred over, but it is now in the system. And then we had 12 new rentals added on. 5 of those 12 are actually Pitkin County units, so they don't have a formal APCHA deed restriction on them. But as we do qualify Pitkin County employees for their housing, they're part of our inventory, but it's not available to the general APCHA public. The other 7 were part of the Inn at Aspen in their redevelopment processes. Those are for their employees. However, they if they can't fill it with an employee, they can still rent it to a qualified individual. Any questions on that one? Good to see it trending up, but. All right, so just looking through here, this was kind of a different way to present. That green line, which is the top line, is the trend over 4 quarters of how many approved applications we saw. Q3 was right around Burlingame Phase 3, so as expected, we saw a big bump. We can kind of see the denials had a bump in Q3 and Q4. We can assume that has part in play to the sales ownership, especially with Burlingame Phase 3. But this is also seasonal rentals, so we do have a lot more seasonal rentals denied in Q3, Q4 as well. This is across all application types, not just long-term tax credit, seasonal, or sales ownership. So we're seeing out of our 2,000 across the 4 quarters, about 3/4 of that get approved, and about 1/4 of those applications in a year do get denied. This is looking specific, a little bit more of a breakdown by application type. Again, we can trend. I'm sorry, I don't know if I can move these closed captions out of the way. There we go. We can see, again, that's the breakdown. Majority of our applications, as typical, come from our rentals, as they have to qualify on an every 2-year basis. And if they move units, it might happen more often. If they get a roommate, it might happen more often. Sales ownership, we did see a fairly large increase there, again, with Burlingame Phase 3. These numbers, again, are looking at 4 quarters, so Q2 of 2023 through the end of Q1 2024. Any questions on that one? Most of this you guys have seen. Okay, so this one's going to take a quick second to explain. So all of these trend lines here are all based on category. I need to make my colors more accessible because they are a little hard to read. I have till July 1st. But looking at this, what I wanted to showcase here are where we're seeing the majority of our applications by category. Seeing them by a number is nice, but I'm a visual learner, so I do like to see it. Again, we can see that big jump in Q3 due to the addition of those 74 Burlingame Phase 3 units that had come available. But majority is typically our Category 3s. Then our Cat 4s and our Category 2s. Those are those top 3 lines in that order, 3, 4, and 2. And then our lowest number are our, starting from that light green line is Category 1, the dark red line is Category 5, and then the lowest line is Category RO. Again, what I always preface this with, applications come in for ownership a lot of the time based on what's available. So if we don't have a lot of RO units, people might put in an application just in case an RO unit comes available and then they're ready to bid. But we do see a driver of when those types of units come available, we see more application types in that. We haven't had a Category 1 unit in, I think, a year and a half, if not longer. But per our regulations, they can bid at Category 1s and 2s, so we do still get Category 1 applications because they can bid on Category 2 units per our regulations.
And that was going to be my question, was where this data derived. It's not random, right?
No, this is approved applications during those quarters.
Really where we should where you should target your housing stock to, right? The category.
Yeah, this is based on, best I can say it, based on demand with what's available.
What's the difference between the graph and the chart?
It's the same numbers. So those are totals across the 4 quarters. So through Q2 through Q1.
The chart is totals.
The right-hand side where my mouse is right now, if it will move, is where this is across all 4 quarters. So across the 4 quarters, we only had 23 Category 1 applications.
Because it didn't really match the graph. I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah, sorry, that's the final totals for each of those categories. So I'm hoping this one just gives you a different view of kind of looking what we see in terms of applications as they come across. Any questions on that one?
I like that one.
Thank you. All right, similar. This is, and apparently I fat-fingered 2 numbers in Rural Ranch here. So it's not 112,113. It's either 112 or 113. I will double check that and fix that. This is how many new and or renewed leases we saw over the course of those 4 quarters. And then again, on the line graph, that is showing each quarter. Meralt obviously has that spike because our seasonal winter leases go from September 1st through April 30th. So we're going to see a huge jump in those units that we rent at Meralt in Q3. But we can see it's a pretty average trend line across all of them. There's no real big gaps except for Aspen Country Inn back in Q3 had a big jump. My notes panel is not working without having a second screen, but if you want to see my notes on move-out reasons on the next page, I'm happy to share that with you. But overall, 334 leases, or 334 new/renewed leases. We do have a total of 351 units. As a reminder, we might not fill all of those units within a year, so that's why that number isn't always going to be exactly 351. We have had some T2 2-bedroom units vacant for quite a period of time due to the income restrictions. All right, so this is move-outs. You can see not a whole lot of movement in Aspen Country Inn over the course of 4 quarters. We only had 2 move-outs at both Aspen Country Inn for 43 units and 2 move-outs at Smuggler with only 11 units. Truscott 1 had more units moved out of. Those percentage on the side are the percentage that those 26 move-outs represent of the entire inventory.
At Truscott.
Of the 351 that APCHA manages directly.
Okay.
Country Inn is a tax credit deal.
Yes, T2 and Aspen Country Inn are both tax credit units. Aspen Country Inn does have that priority for seniors. I believe it's 65 and up, and then 55 and up if we don't find someone 65 and up. Maintenance requests. As we can see, the highest non-other category, and other we use for all of our move-outs for Rural Ranch, so that represents 90 plus there, are plumbing issues. In fact, at all the properties except for Meralt, plumbing was the highest maintenance issue we had reported over the last 4 quarters, except for Meralt. Meralt had electrical as its highest maintenance issue over the last 4 quarters.
What kind of electrical?
I'd have to dig through each individual one. I can make a note to pull that.
Well,
Write that down for me, please.
Specific issues with wiring shortages. I mean, some of that's concerning, right? Because in the fire district responded to was an electrical thing. It sounded like.
So I know how maintenance had a setup for their their maintenance requests. Electrical could include anything from no electric power at all to a broken light switch to a missing fixture or a light bulb being out.
Well,
so
it's not all light bulbs, is it?
Yeah, well, exactly. So I'd want to dig into that a little bit more before I could give you an exact focus on what that was within electrical, or if there was one sticking out specifically at Meralt.
Okay.
All right, so
Do people actually file a maintenance report for A light bulb?
Yes.
Yeah, no, I did an apartment complex in Nebraska.
unique light bulbs, and
Cute college ladies.
and some are a little bit harder to replace, so
So who replaces them?
our maintenance people do, for
'Cause-
the properties that we manage.
A light bulb, really? Okay.
All right, so this these two graphs here, or charts, are about submitted interest over the last 4 quarters. I know it can be a little dense to read, especially the second one, without making this slide deck 30 pages long. I'm trying to keep it within a relatively easy, digestible view. But how this works, anything highlighted in this orangish yellow is the specific number of submit interest we received at Smuggler Mountain Apartments. There were 2 units at Smuggler Apartments. They are both studios. So that's how you would read that chart. Aspen Country Inn only had 1 unit come available in the last 4 quarters, and we had 181 on that specific unit.
People who asked for information on it.
So how our regs are set up is that we have to offer our units to the person with the longest work history. So we have a time period that people can submit interest for a unit, so that they can then we can then take all that information and figure out who has the longest work history. So when they submit interest, they're giving a little bit of that information to us, so we can start that process. And then when we close it, we can move forward.
Amazing.
Shouldn't this number jive with the number before where you said Country Inn had 2?
2 move-outs.
Yeah.
There's probably one I think was in Q1 of 2024, and I don't think it's been advertised yet.
Okay.
Or it's very possible that it was a transfer from a different unit. So someone at Truscott 2 that might have met the senior priority that we then allowed to move over to another property.
Okay.
And so
Why
we
wouldn't
wouldn't
that
have
be
listed
picked
it
up?
in
Why
that.
wouldn't that be picked up here then?
Because these are only ones advertised.
Okay.
And so if we do a transfer, it's not considered an advertisement.
So that's 12, 12 units.
Yes, yeah, my number here on Truscott's
12
wrong. There should be
1,200
6.
indications of interest.
Yes, over the last 4 quarters.
Wow.
Some of them we know we can fill pretty easily. Others are quite challenging. We do always advertise what the income restrictions are to try and help people understand whether they're going to qualify, so that they do not have to go through the qualification process if they know they're over income. However, we do have plenty of people who just go, there's a unit available, I'm going to, put my information in, and they might have the longest work history, but they might be a category 4. And so, and none of these are category 4 units, so they're automatically not going to be able to qualify. So this number is not indicative of how many people qualify for these units, just how many people submitted interest.
So is that a common theme that you get? It's like 20 to 1?
Yeah. Very much so. All right, so moving into sales bids, these are the total number of listings on those 4 quarters. We can see that August and July had the largest number of listings. That's when we put out the first few rounds of Burlingame units. So we had a lot of listings in those 2 months. This upper left chart here is just telling you how many out of those 94 were in which category. And this upper right is how many were by what bedroom. So we can see our highest percentage were category 4s. And our highest percentage bedrooms were 2 bedrooms. And again, that drives ownership applications that we receive, that drives how many bids we receive, which categories we receive bids in. Looking at the next one, this is the total number of bids by household size in the chart up top. This is just the total number of bids in each quarter. So Q2 had 365, Q3 had 2,100, Q4 dropped back down to 662, Q1 had 601. As we're seeing a lot of turnover from people who won Burlingame units, we are seeing on average 2 new listings every week. We're averaging about 7.5 listings per month right now, which is a lot. Previously it was maybe 3-4 a month.
Were these people already had kids or were they pregnant? Sorry, that's a bad joke.
They were thinking of.
Were they doing IVF?
Again, just the breakdown of either a single adult or 2 adults, or we did have 1 bid from a 3-person household or 3 adults. Highest percentage of our bids came from single adult households with no dependents, and then 2-person households with 0 dependents. I think Allison had her hand raised.
Allison?
Thanks. And just like a previous slide that you pointed out, the bids are going to relate pretty closely to what housing availability we saw, right? So if not a lot of 3-bedroom stuff was available, you're gonna have less 3-person, whether that's 1 adult, 2 kids, 2 adults, 1 kid, bids than if we have a lot of studios and a lot of 1-bedrooms up. So I think this chart compared to the number of rooms available throughout those years and maybe you have that coming, would be more helpful to me. Is this saying that almost that more than half of the people who are looking for housing right now are single adults, or is it telling me that more than half of what was available over the last year was best housed by a single adult?
Go ahead.
Okay. And then this is just the breakdown of that same number of bids, but how many bids were per unit bedroom size and per unit category. So how this reads is we had 31 bedrooms, 1 bedrooms that amounted to 1,476 individual bids. Now that could have been across those 31 bedrooms, the same person applying 30 times if the category was correct for them. So take that into consideration as well. And then the graph the chart on the right-hand side is the units broken down by category and how many categories. So we can see our largest number of units we had in terms of category were category 4s. All right, so had 94 listings, but that does not mean we have all those lotteries that take place during the same time. The listing started in Q1 of 2024. The lottery could happen during Q2, so that's why those numbers do not match up. Again, 7.4 lotteries per month. The number you see, 125, doesn't match with the number of lotteries because Burlingame had multiple units within it, so that's why you see 125. These 3 donut charts are the number of winners and their breakdown on how many chances they had as that winner at that point in time, whether they were in an APCHA deed restricted, free market, or other residence, and whether they were a current owner or not. So those 125, that's again across those 4 quarters. I did find it pretty interesting, though, that our chances were pretty well spread. There wasn't one set of chances that won hands over fist the other ones. It was all pretty evened out.
It shouldn't be though, right? Should it?
Every lottery is going to be different. If I have one person with 9 or 10 people with 9 chances and the other with 5 chances, and I only have 20 people in that lottery, it's sure you're going to have a higher percentage in terms of probability. But if there's 90 people in a lottery, which we saw in some of the Burlingame units, that probability goes down.
These numbers are for the eventual winner, or the first person, is this the buyer or the person who won?
This is how it's set up in the system is who's currently marked current winner. That might not mean they have closed, especially if the lottery took place in March of 2024. They may have not closed at this point in time. But again, this is across 4 quarters. So I would say probably at least 80% of these have closed on their units. But this data...
Burlingame 3 was a mess because if people won more than one, there was some
Correct.
weeks of kind of the winners passing and, so the person who got drawn out first maybe didn't end up buying it.
Correct. And in a lot of our 3-bedroom units, since we had a smaller pool of 3-bedroom or 3-person plus households, that drove up chances if you had a lower number of chances compared to a single person who's been here for 20 years bidding on the same unit. All right, so our average work history, actually, if we looked, it's cut in half since 4 quarters ago. Before Burlingame, when it really started, when we added so many units, our work history was in the upper teens, 20s, and our average for Q1 was 10 years of work history. So still, you know, a fairly long time in the community, but that, again, is the average.
Of applicants.
No, of the winners who won in Q1 of 2024
okay.
was 10 years of work history.
Wouldn't this be a better number if you did it through the, what do we call it, the affirmations or whatever? Just ask how long you worked in Pitkin
Yeah,
County.
that's what people have already owned.
What's that?
This is for winners, right?
Correct.
No, I'm just, like, this can be skewed a little bit, but because you gotta win, it's a lottery, right? But it'd be interesting to know people that live, of our 3,000 units,
How many
What the
years of
work
work
history,
service?
yeah.
Yeah, totally. I think that would be interesting. It'd be like 300,000 years of work history.
Which would be a fun number to report, and then divide it by 3,000, right?
Inventory.
You're looking at the average work history of a current owner then at that
Yeah,
point
yeah,
across
yeah.
the program. Okay.
It's definitely a way to show ROI.
All right, so these are the units that closed. Again, this number, I'm not going to match exactly to the 94 or the 89 lotteries we had, as this includes RO units that do not sell through a lottery process. After units close, that's the average sales price of those 18 units in Category 2, and then the total sales price we received from those 18 units combined. So we can see we sold a lot of Category 4s over the last 4 quarters, average price, and I did the math on this again. All of these fall within the range of the average 1 to 3 bedroom max sales price in our current regulations. There is nothing over or under.
Can I ask a question? So when one of those units sells, does all of the money go to the previous owner, or do we take some fees out, or?
Cindy can better explain that than I can.
For any, it depends on the deed restriction. Most of the deed restriction, we get a 2% sales fee from what the sales price is that the seller has to pay to APCHA. We do
Okay.
the contract, we list it, we do the lottery, we do everything, all the paperwork and everything. So, and then Pam, our sales manager, she deals with the lenders, making sure that they got their loan, making sure that the title company's got all the information, get the appraisal gets done, and that an inspection is done on the house as well.
And then we collect 2% for that, for all of that work.
Right.
Thank you.
That's fairly new, though. We didn't always do that, right?
No, we've always collected. It's always, it's been, as far as,
Okay.
as long as I've been with the housing authority, there's been a 2% sales fee. Unless it's an older deed restriction, and we have some older deed restrictions like Hunter Creek started out at a 1% fee. We put updated deed restrictions on them, and then we do 2%. All of the North 40, if we list it, it's 2%. If we don't, we get 1%. Aspen Village, it's a flat $500. Lazy Glen is a 1% unless we sell it, and it's a 2%. So it depends on the deed restriction at the time. We're trying now to be consistent with anything that else that comes up, so to do right now a 2% sales fee. And we put the regulation, the 2% in our regulations. So the deed restriction relates to the regulation, so if the board ever changes that, then anybody who has a deed restriction that says, and as the guidelines are amended from time to time, that sales fee would go into place at that point in time.
Okay, thank you.
When the new deed restriction comes up.
Right, no, even now, if the board, for most deed restrictions, it says, and as the regulations are amended from time to time, if you decide that we should be collecting 2.5% or 3%, and the regulations change, then for any future sales that have that language in their deed restriction, we could charge that amount.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's it.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Just one item on the
This,
agenda.
I think Allison has a question.
Oh, Allison, sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, because I respect birthdays and don't want to delay. But I would love a moment or a future kind of work session discussion among the board of the data that would be most helpful when we get these reports. So Andrew, either a moment now, like of the slides you just showed us, are you taking any action? Is anybody, in the office changing their behavior or anything from this kind of information? Are we getting specific maintenance staff who know how to better deal with HVAC? Because that's our number one. What are we taking away from this? Because I don't want these reports to just be busy work for you. And right now, with some of the conversations we have coming up, I think I would find different data more helpful. I don't know if we are able to, but all the approved packets we have in our system, what are those categories? Who's making up the biggest of those categories as we talk about maybe changing category brackets and even categories of existing properties. We're going to try and mesh some things, and I don't feel like I get a sense of the need because everything we're learning is based on what happenstance. Someone moved away, their unit became available, 100 people per rental, or 100 people per, I think, sale right now is interested. So, I just don't feel like we are learning anything from these data reports that then staff or board can act on. And I'm wondering if there's different, if you could take some of this off your plate and dive deeper into other things that might, sorry, my dog's hacking in the background, that might inform us on some helpful things in the future. I mean, I thought lotteries per month is really interesting, and average number of available. Yeah, sorry that I'm kind of rambling, but is that something we could discuss as a board? And am I wrong? And do you use a lot of his information day to day now?
So I can speak to that part. The APCHA managed side of it, I do provide it to our property managers so that they can look at kind of where their work is going towards. That did drive kind of part of our conversation about the longest work history that we've had based off the submitted interest. Just as an example, when we first started looking at categories and how many bids we were receiving per category of unit, that drove the conversation of are we making it equitable to the people in higher categories who can only bid on category 4, 5, and RO compared to someone who's in category 1 who at that point could bid on any single category. So we have taken some of that data in this project of these presentations, but this was also, when we first started doing board reports, it was meant to also show, hey, these are some of the capabilities of data we can pull out of the system. I'm not tied to doing these same data reports every time, but I also need heads up before to be able to pull data together. Some data doesn't exist in a sensible format in the current system for me to be able to attach certain ideas that sure might make sense for us to look at, but will take some time to be able to pull together. And so I'm not looking to start throwing out random data points for you guys unless it's something that you guys have anything that you want to drive in terms of policy discussions.
It feels like that's a work session. Right?
Probably.
Specific.
And hopefully the sooner the better, because now you're off the hook for at least a quarter. If we can't think of anything for you to report on by then, it could be one of these again. But it does seem like it'd be a helpful thing for the board to discuss if that could go up. I mean, the people you're denying are so much lower in your sales packets than in your rental packets. Like there's just some trends here that I'm seeing that because it takes so much staff time to look at that work history for your longest work history units or for the LIHTC, salary, like what are we doing right on the sales side where people are turning in packets that are getting approved that we're not doing on the rental side? I think there's real change that could come out of some of this data, and I'd love for it to assist you and not just be I don't want it to hinder you.
Sure.
I mean, I would guess on that, Allison, that on the sales side, if somebody's submitting a packet, they've probably at least thought about a mortgage and maybe had a conversation. Whereas on the rental side, you probably have people who don't fully understand the system. So we might look at some education or, just some sort of a rental application checklist with just some things that would help knock some of those out before they get to staff.
And with
gotta
regard
go-
to the rental side too, you have to look at our LIHTC properties, T2 and ACI. Because the incomes are lower on that, especially for the 2 bedrooms, we go through a lot of applicants that really think that they're okay, but then we look at it and they're just not. So that's one of the reasons why the rental side is higher than the ownership side as well. And just to let you know, we received new AMI incomes April 1st, and they bumped up. So there were some people who were a higher category that now are a lower category.
What's the AMI?
So
Will you send that to us?
It's on the website under mass
No,
income
but what's the
assets.
number?
Is it now?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it went up 5 or 6% from the year before. So, so people who might have been in category 4 now are in category 3.
Can you just send us that number? I'm just curious.
I was going to say that we do have the maximum incomes that it is in the regulations on our website.
Oh, it is.
So that is, yeah, the 2024 numbers are on there.
Yeah.
Yes, it is, because I looked it up today. So that is still on our website. The 2020, the updated, you'll see April 2024 on there, and those are the updated numbers are
What is
on
it?
there.
Oh, I'm fine. I'm just open to the.
Okay.
I mean, a lot of people are probably, or I was in a situation where I didn't care if I was renting or owning, right? I wanted my packet in for any opportunity that would come up. So it makes me think, too, that just like,
88,000.
there's one packet, and then once you're in that system, you say apply, and ideally the background robots would know if you even qualify when you hit select to go apply to something. But, I just think I'd love to start using data for action. And for simplifying the workload. So Carson, it's a request of mine as a future work session agenda item. What data do we really want?
I might reach out to you to help set up that.
Okay, great.
Ward.
Andrew, it would really be helpful for me if the information we got in the packet was coordinated with the information that you're displaying on the screen. For me, it gets difficult to try to follow it in the packet, and because line graphs aren't in the packet, but and I might be the only one that's having a
No,
problem.
I was doing the same thing.
I
like
gave up.
The packet, and maybe have the data and then the slide, and then the data and the slide.
Yeah, just so what you present is what we have in our packet, so we can follow it as you go along. Good, I feel better now that.
And I apologize, we usually do make copies. And I forgot.
I don't want paper copies, I would just like it in PDF.
Okay.
I do want a paper copy. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew.
To move into executive session for conference with APCHA attorney for the purpose of receiving legal advice under C.R.S. section 24-6-4024B regarding the following: Silvino versus APCHA, APCHA versus Kelley, Singer versus APCHA, APCHA versus Robertson, and Highlands Villas versus APCHA 2023.
And
On APCHA versus McIntyre.
Yeah.
Second.
okay, we have a motion and a second.
Okay, roll call. Allison,
Yes.
Kelley,
Yes.
Carson,
Yes.
John,
Aye.
Ward.
Aye.
Tom, will this be recorded?
This, since it's solely for the purpose of attorney-client privilege communications, the executive session does not need to be recorded.
Thank you. And there are no further items on the agenda after this executive session. So this will be the end of the recording. for video. But the audio for the end of the meeting will be recorded.
Recording stop.